Yang ji jimbo zirdan nimi zhang zonen hunum jimbo nga gyata bakar targan tsanto shirmarto. Tumba tikje jan la ki sham tsar mechan rawar seringi zhang kamsa jawar tikji shan la yi larma. Jimi panzo jala sara de gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji lo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate sentient beings, please generate bodhicitta before today's teaching. Today we'll continue to teach the Sutra of Great Liberation. After we finish today's class, we'll have an 11-day summer break. Many people don't understand what playing in the grasslands means. That's what we call it here. As everyone knows, we have a summer holiday here, a short break during the summer. Then around next week or the week after, we'll begin teaching on the 28th. Starting from the 28th, if there are no special circumstances, we'll teach the Sutra of Great Liberation on Mondays and Tuesdays, and the Uttara Tantra on Thursdays and Fridays. I'm mentioning this now. Today we'll continue our teaching on the Sutra of Great Liberation. Previously, the Buddha told Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha that the two questions you raised are excellent. Both the Dharma and the Buddha are ultimately unobtainable. This is a good question, because previously it was said that if the Dharma is ultimately unobtainable, and the Buddha is also ultimately unobtainable, then why in different sutras does the Bhagavan teach extensively practicing virtuous Dharma? Why say this? This reason was already explained yesterday. Within the Dharma there are no words, and within words there is no Dharma, which is the explanation from the ultimate perspective, but from the conventional perspective there are words teaching the Dharma. Then it was explained before that from the ultimate perspective, if there are no words within the Dharma, but from the conventional perspective they still exist, Bodhi will be the same. This was already explained before. Today we continue from here. The Buddha continued to say, indeed, it is as you say. Ru means you. Change what you said to as you say. What you said is correct. That's the correct meaning. Son of the lineage, what you spoke was true. Change suo to ru, meaning you. This means that what you said is correct. The Tathagata has no destruction and no birth. In fact, the Buddha has not ceased or ended, nor has the Buddha been produced. No meditation, no practice, and is separate from all meditation and practice. In the ultimate definitive meaning, there is nothing for the Buddha to cultivate and nothing to practice. There is no cultivation of the 6 paramitas free from all cultivation and practice. He doesn't enter the authentic Dharma, and he also doesn't exit it either. From the definitive and ultimate perspective, the Buddha also does not finally arrive at the position of no more learning. There is also nothing to... The Heart Sutra also often says, no wisdom and no attainment. In the end, there is nothing to attain and nothing that can regress. There is neither gain nor loss. In our Uttara Tantra, it says that in the Dharma nature there is no arising, but because of the power of wisdom and compassion in this world. The Buddha manifests the wondrous 12 deeds or 8 deeds, but here regarding the so-called 12 deeds of the Buddha, in actuality, if we speak from the perspective of ultimate emptiness, nothing manifests. Below, basically all the Dharma from birth to final nirvana is also ultimately unobtainable. Some of us might think, wouldn't that be contradictory? Previously it said the Buddha has 32 marks, birth, turning the Dharma wheel, and so on. Later it says there are none. Actually, there is no contradiction. The apparent manifestation should exist, but the true nature does not exist. Just as some physicists now think this way, our vase, the appearing vase, exists, but its essential nature as a vase, aside from an accumulation of some particles, does not really exist. Regarding this point, physicists acknowledge it theoretically. Of course, in terms of actual practice, they don't really have anything. It's only when analyzing theoretically that they acknowledge this. It's the same with the Tathagata. He also isn't born with one remaining rebirth to abide in Tusita. When the Buddha finally reached Tusita heaven, one lifetime away from Buddhahood, the Buddha also did not take rebirth in Tusita heaven. In the ultimate meaning, there is none. Since there is none, he doesn't descend from there. The Buddha also did not come from Tusita heaven through the 5 observations and descend to the human realm. This also did did not happen. He doesn't reside in his mother's womb. Finally, the Buddha entered Queen Maya's womb, dwelling in the womb for 9 months. These also did not happen, because all phenomena, the mind abides nowhere. Because at that time, with all the Dharma, the Buddha realized the mind rests nowhere. Therefore, even while the Buddha was in the womb, teaching Dharma to many beings, this too ultimately didn't happen. While was in the womb, the Buddha also did not speak. What did the Buddha speak? I have already escaped birth, aging, sickness, and death. Remove the character go from transcend. I have already passed, removing the middle character go. While the Buddha was in the womb, because the mind abides nowhere, the Buddha also did not say to beings, I have long ago transcended the cycle of birth and death. This principle was not spoken while in the womb. Then, when emerging from the womb, at birth, when descending. Originally we say that when the Buddha was born, the Buddha descended to the human realm from under Queen Maya's arm. Then the Buddha took 7 steps in 4 directions. Then the Buddha said, in heaven and on earth I alone am honored. But in actuality this is merely an appearance. In reality he doesn't pace out 7 strides in each of the 4 directions. This also did not happen. He doesn't say, I am an unsurpassed Lord in this world. Actually, the Buddha did not say this either. In conventional terms, it exists. Why did the Buddha say, in heaven and on earth, I alone am honored at that time? The Buddha was mainly destroying the arrogance of many celestial beings and many noble people. Many people thought they were very remarkable, but when the Buddha was born in that way, among all beings in heaven and earth, there was none like this. When any other being is born, they do not yet have such merit yet. So, to crush their arrogance, conventionally these things exist, but from the ultimate meaning, even these do not exist. Then after the Buddha grew up, naturally, among the 12 deeds, first the Buddha learned worldly skills, for instance, learning elephant riding and horse riding. Afterward, in the palace, the Buddha enjoyed all aspects of royal life. The sequence here is slightly different, probably just different sutras telling it differently. The order doesn't really matter, though. Anyway, after the Buddha was born and grew up in the palace with the 4 chief queens and 60,000 palace ladies, there was no so-called enjoyment of pleasure with them, no enjoyment of that palatial life. Even before this, the Buddha had not studied worldly arts, crafts, and writing. The Buddha did not study various kinds of music and so forth. These worldly knowledge also did not exist. Then the Buddha also did not learn horse riding skills, riding in circles, elephant riding, or wrestling. Wrestling probably meant testing strength at that time, that is, competing with other Shakya princes, wrestling and comparing their strength. When we talk about the Buddha's childhood or his entire process of growing up, we should keep in mind the historical environment of India at that time. We need to picture that context, including in the Han region and elsewhere at that time when kings and princes were growing up. It wasn't like today with guns and artillery for warfare. At that time, many people, kings and ministers, relied on ancient competitions or physical strength to settle matters with each other. Yet these do not exist in the ultimate sense. The above is basically the first few parts among the Buddha's 12 deeds. From the ultimate perspective, none of it exists. Then what follows is many of the Buddha's subsequent manifestations are actually displayed to benefit and guide beings. Actually, there were also manifestations before, but different sutra has a different way of expression. Just like when we talk, the core meaning stays the same, but our emotional state, our intention when expressing, the way of expression before and after may not be completely consistent. Similarly, in the sutras, sometimes it's about reaching particular beings, so there are different expressions. On the one hand, the Buddha wanted to emphasize a certain focal point, theme, or meaning. So if you look carefully, it seems the overall style before and after is somewhat different. Among the Buddha's 12 deeds, what is explained below is basically all about benefiting beings. The Buddha will manifest these. Just now, all of the above use negative words like not practicing, not learning. So so what about below? In order for sentient beings to pass completely beyond sorrow, enter nirvana is not there in some versions, but it's there in the Tibetan version. Let's keep it. Later, to enable many beings to enter nirvana and approach Buddhahood. For this reason, what did the Buddha manifest before those beings who display the signs of old age? When the Buddha was about to renounce, he departed from the four gates of the palace, and later he saw the scenes of old age, death, and sickness. Then the Buddha also saw the peaceful conduct of a renunciant. After this, to benefit beings. The Buddha generated renunciation and then went forth. Yet from the definitive meaning, the Buddha had long ago attained the end of the 10th bhumi, the highest state of being one lifetime away from Buddhahood. So at that time, just like an ordinary person, occasionally going out and seeing these few people in old age, death, and sickness, and immediately generating renunciation, this was to benefit particular beings. In actuality, it wasn't completely like this. So everyone should know this. I think anyone who studied the Buddha's biography should understand that it was like the Buddha manifested seeing the elderly and generating compassion for them. Actually, this was to do what? This was manifested to crush attachment to the body. When seeing some beings who are old, the Buddha thought, seeing these elderly, I will also grow old. It appears to be like this, but actually for us beings to cut off attachment to the body. If you renounce, you don't care about the body, right? If you're a householder, I'm old, I have wrinkles, feeling very sad. After renouncing, getting old is good. Wrinkles are wonderful. They simply don't care. It's like this. Then the Buddha also manifested the appearance of sickness to cut off attachment to lifespan, because if you haven't fallen ill, you may think you can live for however many years. Seeing sick people, actually, the Buddha was for those beings to cut off their attachment to the permanence of lifespan. Seeing some beings in the process of dying, like in performances now, many follow Indian customs, with 4 people carrying the corpse outside. This was actually to cut off what? Attachment to self and what belongs to self. Actually, these were all manifestations by the Buddha. There was also the manifestation of a renunciant. It wasn't actually like this. This was to lead beings not to seek the bodies of Brahma or Indra. Actually, this section is explained exactly the same in the Great Collection Sutra, the section from yesterday about how the Dharma has no words and words have no Dharma. There's also a section in the Great Collection Sutra that's explained exactly the same. There's quite similar text in the Great Collection Sutra, and the translation style are very similar as well. When there's time, this section also appears exactly the same. Of course, there are some individual deeds that have been adjusted in different versions, but I think the Tibetan and Chinese versions should correspond quite well with no problem, so there's no change. When the Buddha manifested seeing a renunciant, he thought it was very good, and then began wanting to renounce. This was actually to cut off beings thinking that in this world, whether Brahma, Indra, or kings, these might all be very remarkable. In the end, the Buddha manifested renouncing. And finally, seeking the Supreme Bodhi beyond the world. Everyone should know why the Buddha manifested renunciation. This was explained before. Actually, this was to cut off many people's arrogance. Like the Buddha, who was such a famous prince at that time, even the Buddha renounced kingship and went forth. We other people, needless to say. Sometimes when we think about the Buddha's story, everyone knows that regarding the entire royal position, wealth, and retinue, including the people the Buddha loved, when the Buddha contemplated if he could renounce these, then we ordinary worldly people, regarding everything we possess, there's nothing we can't let go of. We should have this kind of thought. So the reason for the Buddha's renunciation was like this. Leaving the palace city, manifesting, transcending the prison of the 3 realms, and revealing this is not the ultimate fruit. Here we should add a few characters. In the Tibetan version, before therefore, add 4 characters. looking forward and backward, looking forward and backward. Gu means to attend to look back, the gu in proceeding without looking back. Shi means to see, although in some versions there is not, and revealing, this is not the ultimate fruit, but in the Tibetan version it has all of these. So we need to add a few characters, looking forward and backward. What does this mean? When the Buddha generated renunciation, left the royal city, what was this? Actually, all of this has meaning. The Buddha was manifesting liberation from the prison of the three realms. Although transcending the prison of the three realms, this manifestation was not the ultimate fruition. When the Buddha left the palace, the Buddha looked forward and backward. In some biographies, it's also like this. When the Buddha was leaving, he probably looked both forward and backward. What was the Buddha expressing at that time? No anger, no attachment. The Buddha was already free and at ease, even though in appearance he looked forward and backward. Actually, there was no greed and no anger. This was the indication. Therefore, his body is perfectly adorned with the 32 marks. The text here is sometimes a bit, these aren't particularly smooth because of sometimes vowel words, but the Tibetan is also the same. So the Buddha's 32 marks adorn the Buddha's body. What is this? This is the entire process of the Buddha's renunciation, but did the Buddha finally obtain the body adorned with 32 marks? What was this supposed to show? Serving a field of merit for being's benefit. Here we should break. The Buddha has such an adorned body, but this should refer to later, because just now the Buddha was in the process of leaving the palace and going forth. Later, the Buddha obtained the body adorned with 32 marks. Actually, this demonstrates that the Buddha is a field of merit for beings. That is to say, the Buddha is so adorned, becoming a field of merit for beings. When the Buddha arrived at a pure stupa and began preparing to go forth, when going forth, the Buddha shaved the top knot. Joluo means top knot. The Buddha shaved the hair, then abandoned the ornaments. All the decorative adornments on the Buddha's body as a prince were completely abandoned. The Buddha sent his horse and faithful attendant Chandaka back, tearing oneself away from all afflictions. This sentence is a bit difficult to understand. Everyone should remember it. What does it mean? Here, Chandaka is Chana, someone of low caste who was always together with the Buddha, called Chana. At that time, Chana was together with the Buddha, and he led that white horse back. What does this mean? At that time, the Buddha told Chana to lead the horse. The sequence should be like this. Chandaka, the Buddha told Chandaka to lead the horse back. All of this, the first was shaving his head, abandoning the ornaments, having the Buddha's original horse led back by Chandaka. Chandaka is a person's name. As you all know about Chandaka, he was together with the Buddha for a whole lifetime. However, he was very arrogant because he thought that he was by the Buddha's side. So later, when the Buddha attained Buddhahood, he became one of the group of 6 monks. He didn't regard anyone highly. Later, when the Buddha passed into nirvana, he still hadn't attained realization. Only much later did he attain the fruit of an arhat. So that Chana by the Buddha's side, that is Chandaka, was very arrogant. He sometimes loved to complain. The group of 6 monks were all like this. People close to a teacher cannot be arrogant. Otherwise, I've seen many people by teachers' sides. They often think if the relationship with the teacher is slightly better, they become particularly arrogant. They often say, I am this and that. The Rinpoche said this, I said that. The Khenpo said this, I said that. Some are true, some are false. Others also may not know whether it's true or false. These kinds of people often boast. In the end, they become Chandaka. Others, humble ones, have already attained fruition, but he thinks he's nothing remarkable either. When the Buddha went out, I led the horse for him. Beyond that, he didn't do many other things either. In our world, the most remarkable should be the Buddha, but those by the Buddha's side, whether Devadatta, who was his closest relative, or Sunaksatra, who served as an attendant for 12 years, 22 years, right? 24 years. Yeah. 24 years as an attendant. So sometimes attendants, even Ananda attained fruition the latest. Probably their time serving was just 2. Today I need to talk about these service people. arrogant, busy, and not practicing well. In the end, it might be better to stay distant from the teacher and practice well on their own. If you practice as well, you don't even need the teacher's connections. Generally, those right by the Buddha's side, like Sunaksatra, Ananda, Chana, should all receive excellent blessings, but some became arrogant, some did bad things, all kinds of problems, right? So this is really important. We humans naturally, we all know some secretaries by leaders' sides aren't necessarily anything remarkable. Some secretaries just hand the leader a document, a teacup. Many leaders nowadays are like this. When they arrive, the teacup and notebook are placed there, yet they are very arrogant. I'm right by the leader's side. In recent years, I've met many people close to leaders. Whatever the leader's character is like, the people around them develop that same character. Sometimes, if the people by one side don't do very well, probably many people, because they don't have the opportunity to directly contact the teacher or leader, when they contact them, from their behavior, they deduce, wow, this leader's character probably isn't good either, or this teacher's character probably isn't good. They immediately develop wrong views and never want to study again, never want anything to do with it anymore. This kind of situation exists. Of course, I'm not saying that all service people around teachers are bad. Some are particularly good, like by Mifam Rinpoche's side, there was formerly an attendant called Wose. He worked tirelessly, completely disregarding his own body, all for the teacher's health and everything about the teacher, including later his writings. He took these very seriously. At that time, like when Mifam Rinpoche was alive, if his treatises were to be block printed, it required tremendous manpower and financial resources, very laborious work. But Khenpo Kunzang and attendant Wose took it very seriously. Later, so many Dharma texts existed. At that time, many people said Wose's merit was inseparable from all this. Of course, there are both good and bad examples, and everyone should also pay attention. You see, the Buddha asked Chana to lead the horseback. All of this manifests what? Being far from all afflictions. The Buddha has no afflictions. If there were afflictions, the Buddha couldn't bear to shave the hair either, couldn't bear to abandon the ornaments either. The Buddha probably also very much liked that horse, like now people like houses and cars. Back then in India, if there had been cars, the Buddha would probably ride the best car. If there had been cars in the palace at that time, whether it was a Mercedes or BMW, the Buddha would have had Chandaka drive it back. There might have been something like this. This indicates being liberated from all afflictions. The Buddha shaved his beard and hair, manifesting no attachment to all phenomena. This beard and hair, just now the top knot were already shaved. Here it's shaving beard. Indian people have quite a lot of facial hair. I have quite a lot of facial hair. If I do retreat in the future, I'm thinking of deliberately letting it grow for a few months to see. It might be rather ugly. The hair is gone and there's only a beard. But this beard, many of my relatives from here have quite a lot of facial hair, so they have to shave every day, otherwise it's hard to manage. Previously, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche didn't really praise keeping beards. Originally, Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro and I would often joke with each other. Sometimes I kept my beard relatively neat. Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro's was everywhere. I'd say, "Your beard has no discipline, it grows wherever it wants." The two of us joked with each other. Later, somehow, this got out. It reached Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, and he mentioned it in class. I'd said that Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro's beard wasn't quite proper. I even said this openly in class. But now, neither of us has one. He didn't keep it, and neither did I. When I first arrived, I would trim mine a bit every day, thinking it looked rather nice. When you're young, you'll try all sorts of things. Regarding beards, Indians generally keep them, and in the Han region too, for a period many people kept them, especially in the Middle East. In our Luhuo and Dawu regions, especially the men love keeping beards quite commonly. At that time, shaving the beard. In Tibetan, a hair isn't separated out. Hair and beard actually means facial hair. Shaving the beard is also a manifestation of having no attachment to all phenomena, wherein the Kasaya manifests guiding beings, since the Kasaya has only one color. Didn't we say the other day that Shakyamuni Buddha was the greatest entrepreneur? All the employees wear the same uniform. We are the employees. wearing the Kasaya can tame beings. Indeed, regarding the Sangha, actually now many businesses have uniforms. For us Buddhists, whether Theravada, Tibetan or Han Buddhism, we all wear uniforms, naturally arising a sense of joy. Very neat, dignified, magnificent. There's this feeling. If we really call this an employee uniform or a company standard suite, the Buddha should be the earliest one to establish this kind of collective uniform, right? Established for us. Sometimes when we see monastics wearing kasayas in procession or reciting precepts, indeed this scene is particularly special, inspiring faith in people. It's very wonderful. This tames beings. Just by seeing it, people who previously didn't have much faith, when they see monastics all wearing kasayas, so dignified. In the past at our ceremonies, sometimes we would wear yellow robes. Here we also often had this. At that time, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche gave empowerments or held various activities, if we could do this now, it might be even better. But now our focus is on study. Later, when each of you displays miraculous powers, that's when it should be manifested. Then, at that time, the Buddha learned from Rudraka and also Arada Kalama. Arada Kalama is sometimes called Arada. In Tibetan, it's Arada. These were two sages. One was Rudraka, who was also quite remarkable, a Samkhya non-Buddhist sage. Arada Kalama, or Arada, was a very remarkable meditation master. These two, actually, the Buddha received teachings from them. What does this manifestation mean? It destroys self-conceit and arrogance. The Buddha, by all rights, had already completely understood what these sages knew. But in order to destroy arrogance or to demonstrate his own humility, he also listened to some methods of meditation and abiding practice in the presence of these sages. Later, when the Buddha attained enlightenment, he very much wanted to teach them, but these several sages had all already passed into nirvana. Practicing austerities for 6 years was to tame the Tartikas, because non-Buddhists place great importance on ascetic practices. If the Buddha didn't practice austerities at all, it seems they couldn't accept it. People nowadays are the same. If a monastic practices austerities, we Tibetans say, Gye Senche. Gye Senche means they particularly want to take refuge. For example, if I have nothing at home, I only have a bag of tsampa and stay in a cave, then Gye Senche. But if a teacher drives a luxury car and lives in a particularly luxurious house, faith doesn't arise. So regarding ascetics, it was true in the past, and it's still like this now. This is why when Buddhists sometimes practice austerities, it's also very beneficial for themselves. Of course, if you have the means and deliberately practice austerities, that's not necessarily ideal. But sometimes when you don't have much, whether it's housing, food, or many other aspects, if you're not too extravagant, it's still very good. After 6 years of ascetic practice, when the Buddha came out, a shepherd girl offered him milk porridge. He accepted the food, which was actually according with worldly dharma. The Buddha had attained the Vajra body. It would be absolutely impossible that he was extremely emaciated at that time, and by relying on a woman's milk, his body immediately recovered. This follows the worldly dharma, including the Buddha breathing. In some sutras, it said these are all according with the world. Then, on the way to the Vajra seat, the auspicious sage offered kusha grass, that is, hay grass. What does this manifestation mean? Contentment with few desires. It represents contentment with few desires. At that time, when he received someone's offering of kusha grass, he immediately accepted it. So sometimes for us, when we have some means regarding others' offerings, whether good or not so good, it's best if we can accept them. After accepting, dedicate the merit properly. Otherwise, you say, this one I'll take, this one I don't want. You take it away. Some Dharma teachers become selective when they have a bit of means, but the Buddha never did this. This demonstrates contentment with few desires. Later, at the Vajra seat under the Bodhi tree in India, sitting atop a cushion of grass demonstrated defeating the lack of self-control and idleness. He didn't sit on a particularly high-end cushion. So, as Buddhists, sometimes regarding our housing and food, we shouldn't be particularly picky with very high demands, insisting on luxury. Of course, people without means may want but have no way. But when you have some means, thinking, oh, my housing must be luxurious, my food should be delicacies from land and sea, or my clothing should be high-end brand names, As a Buddhist, this isn't very dignified. If you're a non-Buddhist, then there's nothing wrong with your own merits. We also know that many great masters and adepts of the past wore a single robe for decades, lived in a simple dwelling for so many years. If we consider their capabilities and wisdom, they could have completely lived in particularly nice places and eaten particularly fine food. But many of the Buddha's followers basically understand, as long as our body can stay alive, all those many other pursuits are just wasting time and don't have particularly great meaning. So at that time, some manifestations were of contentment and some were manifestations of destroying arrogance. Then the gods and Nagas praised and revered the Buddha, and this manifests the fruition of meritorious adornment. Otherwise, the Devas and Nagas are very arrogant and wouldn't offer praise. Yet this shows that the Buddha's merit is particularly majestic and remarkable. Then subduing non-Buddhists, she also defeated the 6 non-Buddhist teachers and their schools. What does this mean? Taming all the Maras demonstrates the power of courage, as whether in wisdom or in physical strength, the Buddha was incomparable. It wasn't by chance or coincidence that the Buddha gained a reputation. It wasn't like that. The Buddha's intellectual power, his 10 powers, and so forth. This is the strength he possesses. The Buddha's right hand pointing to the earth represents what? The power of merit. The Buddha, during 3 incalculable eons, accumulated the provisions of merit. When his whole hand points to the earth like this, actually the great earth can be pressed down. On this point, the earth goddess can also bear witness. Many sutras speak of this. At that time, the great earth shook. Actually, when the Buddha entered the womb, when he turned the Dharma wheel, when he was born, when he achieved enlightenment, and so on, many times the great earth shook. When the great earth shakes, the Buddha is, whether to teachers, to parents, or to beings, manifesting, responding with kindness. The above is actually meditating on the absence of signs, attaining the unsurpassed path of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. At that time, the Buddha cultivated all phenomena as signless and wishless, and finally, he attained the path of unsurpassed Bodhi. So the above should be this kind of demonstration. Below, let me explain that the Buddha actually has different names. The Buddha is said to have different names in this sutra. Well, what different names are these? Manifesting the knowing of all characteristics of phenomena, observing the Dharma, equally named Buddha. We often call the Buddha. Why is he called Buddha? Because he knows the true nature of all phenomena. As well, he observes whether good or bad, high or low, all phenomena equally. All beings are also observed equally. The Buddha understood the characteristics of all phenomena. They are equal. In the ultimate truth, good and bad are all equal. In our tantric teachings, we often speak of equality and purity, inseparable equality, purity, and non-duality. The Buddha has such wisdom, so it's called Buddha. The name comes from this. The Buddha can also be called Tathagata. Why is it called Tathagata? Since the wisdom of a Buddha is unconquerable. The Buddha's wisdom in this entire world is unsurpassable. No one can surpass the Buddha. Moreover, the Dharma the Buddha taught, change no to as. The Dharma the Buddha taught are as the past, present, and future Buddhas. What does this mean? The Buddha's wisdom is incomparable. Moreover, the Dharma the Buddha taught is just like the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, all exactly the same. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Dharma he taught, actually, the Buddhas of the past, present, and future are all exactly the same. So, for this reason, Tathagata, there's this as here. What is Tathagata like? As the Buddhas of the 3 times, coming exactly the same. So it's called Tathagata. The Tathagata here also, some people ask, why is it called Buddha? You can answer them with the principle above. Why is it called Tathagata? Tathagata is also for this reason. Why is he called the All-Knower? Because he directly and clearly perceives and comprehends all virtuous and non-virtuous phenomena, the activities of the 3 times. Moreover, whether virtuous Dharma, non-virtuous Dharma, or neutral Dharma, all of these causes and effects, all appearances and true nature, he knows completely. So it's called Sarvajñata. Sarvajñata means omniscience, the knowledge of all aspects. So the Buddha is called the knowledge of all aspects. This is the 3rd different name. The Buddha speaks truly, including when in the causal stage the Buddha is one who doesn't speak falsely. The Dharma the Buddha taught is absolutely true. Because of speaking true and authentic speech, he is called the scholar among gods and humans, teacher of celestial beings and teacher of humans, because what the Buddha says is completely true. Many people in our world, what they say today is right, what they say tomorrow is wrong, many untrue words. The Buddha has eliminated all ignorance and the causes of false speech, so he is called teacher of gods and humans. One who trains and examines like that is called a bodhisattva. Finally, let's summarize the principles explained above. If some students understand according to the meaning above, including what was explained previously, how the Buddha is in the ultimate as empty nature, how the Buddha manifests conventionally, and moreover, each manifestation is to benefit beings. If someone observe in this way, then they can be called bodhisattvas. If they don't observe this way, one who examines in a way opposite of that is not called a bodhisattva. This even is called deceiving all Buddhas. This is called a fraud. If not like this, originally the principle above is like this, but you understand it in the opposite way. In the Contemplation Sutra it says, contemplating in this manner is called right contemplation. Contemplating otherwise is called wrong contemplation. So if you contemplate like this, that's correct view. This is because we've examined the Buddha and Dharma comprehensively from both the ultimate and conventional angles. If we contemplate this way, no matter what status you are, whether lay or monastic, whether Han or Tibetan, we can say, oh, old bodhisattva, young bodhisattva, new bodhisattva, you can be called a bodhisattva. If you're not like this, then not to mention bodhisattva, that's called deceiving all Tathagatas. Certainly that's a big fraud. Now let me interject something here. In this internet age, we sometimes really need to be careful. There are some people who constantly fundraise through soliciting donations for various projects. This situation should be noted. I've said this many times in class. Some people now claim they're delegated by me, saying they're the leader of the 7th study session or the leader of the 20th study session. We've repeatedly clarified through different methods, yet they continuously collect money, continuously deceive others, because people nowadays are quite clever. If they say, I'm sent by so-and-so, or I'm in charge of such and such study, or I'm in charge of such and such life release, in this way, many people become superstitious. Then money gets transferred to their card. This matter. Let's not talk about ultimate and conventional for now, clearly, openly. You could say blatantly, sometimes it is. In this way, sometimes the relevant national departments, when they should manage, they also can't manage. When they shouldn't manage, they manage everything. This kind of situation exists, so these should be worth understanding. We Buddhists should also pay attention. Otherwise, now many people, under various names like offering meals, life release, making offerings to teachers, offering to monastics, and also making Buddha statues, building stupas, and also offering to monastics, helping sick people, supporting education, etc. All the names have merit. Indeed, if done this way, there is great merit, but actually some may do a portion. Some people don't do it at all. Some may do most of it, but in the middle, they themselves may also pocket some various kinds of situations. So generally speaking, I hope. I've also said repeatedly on my end, whether any construction or any study, I've never arranged anyone or through other methods to fundraise or solicit donations. Some people say, although it's said this way in class, the hidden meaning isn't like this. These people are really foolish. Some people think, perhaps only I can understand the hidden meaning. Then they start donating money. This is very frightening. Whether those are deceiving all Tathagatas, I don't know, but they're definitely deceiving many people. This is something we Buddhists, especially now in the internet age, should pay attention to. If people around you are really doing this, don't just ignore it or pay no attention. You have a responsibility to clarify with others. Yes means yes, no means no. We should base our judgment on facts, not on people. This is very important. Here the Buddha says, son of the lineage, all Buddhas are not arising, not engaging, not producing, and not ceasing. Actually, the true Buddha neither emerges nor enters, neither comes nor goes, neither arises nor ceases. Yet to liberate beings, the Buddha will proclaim appearing in the world. The Buddha appeared in the world in Lambin. To liberate beings, the Buddha also proclaims passing into nirvana. Finally, between the twin sala trees, the Buddha manifested nirvana. There will be such things because the Buddha's birth for many beings is also beneficial. Finally, the Buddha's manifestation of nirvana is also the same. Our gurus are also like this. Truly qualified spiritual friends are manifestations of the Tathagata. They are manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In the definitive meaning, you can say they neither arise nor cease, but to eliminate our being's wrong views and wrong understanding. In appearance, our gurus also manifest illness and nirvana, coming to this world, taking rebirth, etc. These should also be manifested. These principles aren't just what Buddhists say, it truly is like this. At the beginning, sometimes we also don't realize this either. But later, indeed, when the Buddha passed into nirvana, many people also attained fruition because of this passing. They thought, oh, continuing like this is pointless. Look, even the Buddha's Vajra body finally manifested passing into nirvana. What reliability does our body have? Just like in Patrul Rinpoche's words of my perfect teacher, there are some examples. The Buddha such and such, if even the Vajra body is like this, what do we have? If formerly even a universal monarch's wealth was impermanent, our households like anthills, what reliability do these have? Generally speaking, when a great being manifests nirvana, many people should have a fresh contemplation. When our precious teacher passed into nirvana, many of us close disciples really experienced this renewed. We had to reconsider everything. Before, we'd assumed the teacher would always be there. There was nothing, and then suddenly manifesting nirvana like this. Wow, such profound changes can occur in this world. At this moment, immediately in the heart, there's a new, whether practice or contemplation compared to when the teacher was alive, perhaps even more diligent, more vigorous. This happens. So sometimes truly great masters and adepts, truly Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, although they manifest this kind of impermanence actually for beings, there's tremendous benefit. At this time, Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha addressed the Buddha saying, Bhagavan, I have for a long time already understood the principle of the emptiness of all phenomena. Since the Tathagata has neither emerging nor subsiding, he is not born in the king's palace. This principle is also known. For this reason, the Tathagata would not be born in the royal palace, nor would he finally manifest nirvana under the twin sala trees. The Tathagata should be ultimately permanent, but to liberate beings, the Tathagata manifests ascetic practice. In the middle, the Tathagata does various worldly activities and finally entering nirvana. In actuality, although manifesting these, he has no changing and no proliferation. Actually, there's not the slightest movement or change. He abides as the Tathagata's sphere of activity. This is truly anyone who have studied the Uttara Tantra should know. Although before beings there's manifestation of arising, ceasing, coming and going, the true nature of the Tathagata is completely unwavering. The Tathagata can be explained in terms of 5 aspects of the Dharmakaya. Today we should finish this volume, that's fine. His body will emerge in the 3 realms, and also the 5 aspects of the Dharma body will emerge. Finally, Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha said, according with the 3 realms, the Tathagata's body can have 5 kinds of bodies. Everyone should remember this. In the Sutra of Great Liberation, the Tathagata's body is classified somewhat differently from the Uttara Tantra. Actually, here it speaks of Dharmakaya, but the Dharmakaya spoken of means the Tathagata's body. Sometimes in Tibetan it speaks of Dharmakaya, sometimes there's no character for Dharma. According with beings in the 3 realms, the Tathagata's body should have 5 kinds of bodies. What are those 5 aspects? The 5 are like these. The body has an authentic essential nature. The body is endowed with good qualities. The body is produced from the essential nature of phenomena. The 4th is the emanation, Dharmakaya. The 5th is the space, Dharmakaya. We'll explain one by one. First, this body is said to have an authentic essential nature. Why is it called the true nature Dharmakaya? Thus it's called means the reason why. Why is it called the true nature Dharmakaya? True nature Dharmakaya, transcending the ultimate fruit of true nature, permanently dwelling in the Dharma realm. So it's called the true nature Dharmakaya. I see in the Zongjing Lu there are also 5 kinds of Dharmakaya, but the Zongjing Lu says the first, true nature Dharmakaya, mainly is signless and unconditioned. It's explained from the level of unconditioned phenomena, meaning transcending true nature, transcending the nature of true existence. Moreover, a particularly supreme fruit like the so-called Svabhavakaya, Dharmakaya, but this kind of Dharmakaya permanently dwells in the Dharma realm, with the Dharma realm neither separated nor united, never departing. This characteristic is called the true nature Dharmakaya, similar to our own nature body, self-nature body. This is somewhat similar. This is the first. Second, thus it's called the merit Dharmakaya. Why is it called the merit Dharmakaya? Performs various types of activities in order to escort all sentient beings beyond sorrow, performing deeds and accumulating practices, accumulating merit provisions. It wondrously performs all virtues. All these virtuous dharmas all possessed. So it's called the merit Dharmakaya. Merit Dharmakaya, similar to the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya is the enjoyment perfection body, and all merit and all virtuous dharmas are complete. Similar to the cause of the self-nature body mentioned earlier, it belongs to the form body. The third is the Dharma nature body, what is called the Dharma nature body. It is mainly from the perspective of knowing all characteristics of phenomena, realizing all characteristics of phenomena, principles without exception. Having taken all the characteristics of Dharma to heart, it lacks misunderstanding. It is produced from the emptiness that perfectly understands that sphere of activity, from objects arising into empty understanding. Moreover, this method of realization through form, sound, smell, taste, touch, from the level of objects generating wisdom, realizing emptiness. Furthermore, this kind of emptiness wisdom is completely fulfilled and perfected. Dharma nature, we generally speak of it in terms of objects, and wisdom is spoken of in terms of subjects. This is similar to what we call the wisdom body. In some sutras and tantras, it's called the wisdom body. From realizing all phenomena's appearances, one generates the wisdom knowing all that exists and the wisdom knowing the nature as it is. From this perspective, it's called the Dharma nature Dharmakaya. Fourth, why is it called the emanation Dharmakaya? This is similar to our Nirmanakaya. When the Tathagata appears in the world according with the 5 classes, whether virtuous or non-virtuous appearances, there's not one that isn't liberated. The Tathagata's 6 kinds of emanations, the 6 capable ones among the 6 realms, some are hungry ghost forms, some are animal forms, and some are human forms. So whether appearing virtuous or non-virtuous, some manifest as prostitutes and butchers, some are particularly supreme and dignified bodies. There's not one that doesn't liberate beings. Obtaining a name from the perspective of emanating all things, so it's called the emanation Dharmakaya. This is the fourth. The fourth is somewhat similar to the Nirmanakaya below the last one. Fifth, thus also called the Spas Dharmakaya. Why is it called the space body? Since space is infinite, the Dharma body is also infinite. Beings are unending, afflictions are unending. Afflictions unending, the Buddha's great compassion and wisdom are unending. Space has no edge. The Dharmakaya also has no edge. Space cannot be measured. The Dharmakaya also cannot be measured. So the Tathagata's body is like great space. This is great space, not big emptiness. The Tathagata's body is similar to space, not outer space. It means empty space. The above explains the 5 kinds of Dharmakaya. Below we'll make a summary. To liberate beings, the appearing body has 5 divisions. To liberate beings, the Buddha manifests this way. Regarding this, we've recently been studying the Uttara Tantra. Everyone should have a very good understanding of the 3 bodies in the Uttara Tantra, how the Buddha abides in ultimate reality, how the Buddha manifests emanation bodies conventionally. Everyone should understand this. Understanding the Tathagata, unarising and unceasing, you understand all phenomena equally, unarising and unceasing. For liberate beings, the Dharma can also arise. The Buddha does manifest. The Buddha and the Dharma both exist solely to liberate beings. That's why they can manifest. When there's the right conditions, the Dharma flourishes. The Buddha also appears in the world, and spiritual friends also appear in the world. If there are no conditions, then the Buddha doesn't appear. Spiritual friends don't appear. Dharma also disappears. The teachings of spiritual friends are also the same. It mainly depends on beings' merit and conditions. This is essential. Well, just now the Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha, after asking this question, the Buddha's answer to him has reached this point. Next, the Buddha tells Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha, son of the lineage, since you understand the characteristics of phenomena in the same way as a Tathagata, then you have no obstacles or obstructions regarding the sphere of activity. At that time, the Buddha praised Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha with very high praise. Regarding Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha, actually in Chinese Han Buddhism, there are many iconographic representations, including sutras of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. In Tang esoteric Buddhism, there are especially many. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are also many. In Tang esoteric Buddhism, there are translations by Amoghavajra, translations by Shubhakarasimha, and translations by Dharmaksema. Many are all sutras of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. There are also rituals of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. So Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha indeed possesses tremendous merit. Look, the Buddha says you're no different from the Tathagata. Your realm is without obstruction, without impediment. So now in our 8 great Bodhisattvas biographies, we often invoke Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. By praying this way, we can understand the meaning of emptiness like space. From today onward, it's best if we recite 10,000 times with no time limit. Even 100 years is fine. However long you can live, we don't know. We all recite Namo Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. Previously, with Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha and Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, our connections were quite good. But many people think Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha is like space, having nothing to do with me. Actually, it's not like this. If we truly want to understand a realm like space, indeed Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha is very important. Later, we'll learn more about his merit. When visualizing Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha in different rituals, the appearances are of several kinds. There's one from Tibetan Buddhism. The Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha holds a sword in the right hand, somewhat similar to Manjushra, and the left hand holds a scripture. This is from Tibetan Buddhism. The Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha in Han Buddhism, with hand emblems quite similar to the previous one, also holds a sword and a lotus. On the flower, it seems to be a wish-fulfilling jewel or something. There's a slight difference. There's also one from Tang esoteric Buddhism. In Tang esoteric Buddhism, the Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha is quite prevalent. I see approximately from 842 to 846 CE, there was a master Huyun who went to Tang, China to seek the Dharma, and he sought many Dharma methods of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. Later, he began teaching the Dharma in Japan, and the 5 great Ākāśagarbha Bodhisattvas became well known. They respectively ride different mounts. This is Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha riding a Garuda. This is Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha riding a peacock. There's also one riding a horse, one riding a lion, and the last one rides an elephant. So the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like the 5 Manjushras, having different forms. Like in Japan, for so many years, over 1,000 years, they've had particular faith in Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. In Mipham Rinpoche's biography of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha, everyone should also be able to see that Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha is when we pray, we'll attain inconceivable blessings. Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. Look here, the praise is also particular, same as the Tathagata, no different from the Buddha. His main characteristic, like Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha, fulfilling wishes, is very important. Manjushra, opening wisdom, is very important. Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha enables us to awaken and realize. So each of us, why not establish a good relationship with Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha? We often say, I can't awaken, what should I do? Actually, seek Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. He definitely has a way. The Buddha said, "Son of the lineage, in the future there will be an eon called pure eon. This land is called bliss, but in Tibetan it's called enjoyment." No, that land is called enjoyment. In other versions, I forget what it says in the Danhuang Versio. I didn't have time to look. This morning and afternoon were all about discussing the project, the library's renovation, discussing about over 10 million yuan's worth of matters continuously. So from yesterday, the day before, recently I joked with them, generally worldly people, doing tens of thousands of yuan in business, all request bodhisattva blessings and recite protector prayers. We're also renovating the monks' library. If we do it well, in the future it will be like the nuns' library. At that time, the nuns' library, during the process of building it, during the process of planning it, the relocation process was very exhausting. But we know once it's built, for many people, especially for those seeking wisdom, a library is still very important. At that time, we thought this way. So recently, we've continuously been. We didn't establish a good relationship with Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. We've continuously been with these. Yesterday and today, we've been talking with 8 construction teams. Each being's character, intentions, and goals are all different. Sometimes this is a very good practice method, so I didn't have time to look at what the Danhuang version says. In other versions, it's like this. But in Tibetan, the land's name is enjoyment. This land, all of them, what are they? With great bodhisattvas, their discussions are all Mahayana Dharma. In the future, Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha's pure land will be like this. Here there are no Shravakas or Pratyeka Buddhas. Even the names don't exist. Their names simply cannot be heard. How much more so the names of hell, hungry ghosts, animals, and evil destinies. At that time, the Buddha said, "In this eon you will attain Buddhahood." Moreover, the Buddha's name will be pure adornment Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly enlightened one. Great beings from other directions, great beings from other worlds, the Shi and Padmasambhava, great beings from other worlds will travel there. They will all come to your land to hear the Mahayana Sutra of all-expansive liberation, that is, our Sutra of great liberation. We should also make aspirations. At that time, we can receive the transmission from a bodhisattva. Otherwise, receiving the transmission from an ordinary person, there may not be particularly great benefit. After listening, we forget it all. There's nothing. We should make aspirations like this. Therefore, all beings, if they hear the name of Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha and make prostrations and offerings, they will certainly be reborn in such a world of enjoyment. So this requirement is still quite simple. We in this world now often make offerings and prostrate to Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. No other conditions are mentioned. In the future, we'll be reborn in this world. If beings seek the Mahayana Dharma and haven't yet attained the acceptance of non-arising, they should uphold this Sutra of great liberation. This person, not exceeding 10 Buddhas, among our 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate eon, not exceeding 10 Buddhas, will certainly receive a prophecy. This is not cause to receive prophecy. So on the one hand, we should also do this. Just now, I also requested everyone to recite Namo Bodhisattva Ākāśagarbha. From now on, each person makes an aspiration to recite 10,000 times and finish reciting before you pass into nirvana. In this way, today, great extensive liberation, confessing transgressions, eliminating negativity, adorned for accomplishing Buddhahood. Sutra, the middle volume, has already concluded. This is very good. We didn't specially arrange it. Looking today, wow, very good. Today, just as we're about to have our summer break, the middle volume is already complete. The auspicious connections are very good. It wasn't specially arranged, but teaching along, when I opened my eyes to look, wow, it's time for vacation, time to rest. Having taught the first and middle volumes is not easy. I hope that in the second half of the year, we can finish teaching the lower volume. Everyone, let's work hard together on this. Today, everyone can get relaxed. Many here have already. Sometimes examinations are also exhausting. I heard some Dharma teachers still want to teach in the holiday. Of course, your spirit is very praiseworthy, but it's best to let everyone have freedom when we have a vacation. Don't have Dharma teachers who, because they are very diligent, insist that everyone have to listen. don't do this. The holiday schedule is the entire arrangement of the school. Some Dharma teachers think whatever they want. They just feel, I originally, during the 10 days, I'd teach a class. But later, I thought, what is the intention of most Buddhists? If Dharma teachers really have nowhere else to go and really want to teach, then teach a short one yourselves. People below can listen or not listen. We should have this kind of freedom. Otherwise, some of Dharma teachers are too open, some Dharma teachers are too conservative. Why do we need to have a kind of overall requirement from the Academic Affairs Office? In this respect, later, whether teaching classes or teaching in advance, these need to have a unified arrangement. Of course, if for very few people who have a particularly strong aspiration, teaching them a little class, this is acceptable. Some people go out, especially people who just renounced, people who just took refuge, all feel we shouldn't be playing in the grasslands. Human life is so hard to obtain, really like this. When I first came to Larungar, I was particularly His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche at that time said, outside they pitch tents and play. On the one hand, I had nowhere to go. And on the other hand, I thought, not studying such good treatises, oh my, no way. Why does His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche let everyone relax like this? I just stayed home memorizing texts. When memorizing, later it seemed everyone around had all left. I also couldn't sit still anymore. Going to the top of the Stupa mountain to look, over there everyone. At that time it wasn't like now. There were some small tents. I ran down again. Running down, there also weren't familiar people. The second day, I put a little tea in a water bottle, took a little tsampa, then went there to watch. At that time, they were performing the Gesar epic. I watched for a short while. I always felt it wasn't good to watch. I should be memorizing texts. At the beginning, it's understandable. Indeed, renunciation, feeling human life, is hard to obtain, very important. But after studying Buddhism for a long time, one may get tired. At the beginning, don't need to be particularly diligent. In the end, don't be too relaxed. We still should have this. So, Dharma teachers, we see you all. I heard some people want to teach. I rejoice it. But generally speaking, for people below understanding beings' faculties, this is most important when the Buddha teaches the Dharma. So it's best not to have any forced listening to classes. Otherwise, if it's forced, it violates the Dharma. It's not very good. Okay, nothing else. Today we finished teaching the middle volume. Very good.
Sonandai Tanche Rukaya Tonani Dejana Pasi Jirgana Jirano Chupai Chupun Sonen Droa Droa Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye